Namaste. Hello. My name's Vrindavan dasi. I'm a teacher at the Australian School of Meditation at Nobby's Beach, and also I have a yoga teacher training course called Veda Yoga Teacher Training. Tonight, Radha Krishnadas has asked me to talk because there's been a question that's sort of specific to what I teach in my yoga philosophy of the training course. So he thought it's a good opportunity to address it from my angle. So before we hear yoga philosophy, it's really good to just rest the mind on the mantras, on the names of the Supreme, just to purify us and make us just ready to hear, and we can absorb and understand. So let's get started. We'll start first of all just by withdrawing from your day. You may have had a busy day, and maybe later on you've got to be busy, and maybe tomorrow you've got things that are going to happen. So let's just bring our attention to the present. So sit comfortably, close your eyes, and just take a moment to listen to the sounds around you. Some nearby, some in the distance. And now bring your attention to how you're feeling externally. We'll start at the top of the head and slowly scan down the back of the head, down the back of your neck to your shoulders, just noticing any sensations you're receiving. Scan down your arms to your hands and down the back of your body, on either side of your spine, down to your lower back, back of your pelvis, back of your thighs, knees, your calves, your heels, the soles of your feet. Just being aware of any sensations you're receiving from your toes, the top of your feet, your ankles, shins, knees, thighs, your abdomen, your lower chest, the upper chest. And moving your awareness to your throat, your ears, your forehead, your eyes, your cheeks, inside your mouth, the teeth and the tongue, moving up to your nose, feeling inside your nostrils, the feeling of the air as you breathe in and out. Maybe you'll be feeling the air a little cool on the inward breath, a little warm on the outward breath. Following the breath down into your lungs and feeling the movement of your chest as you breathe in and out. Become really aware of that point at the very bottom of your lungs where the air changes direction. No longer breathing in, and you're starting to breathe out. You feel your diaphragm pushing up under the rib cage, squeezing the air out, and then releasing as you breathe in. You may be aware of a very slight pause between the inward and outward breath. And similarly, bring your attention to the tip of your nostrils, feeling where the outward breath stops and the inward breath begins. Just being aware of that turning point at your nostrils. And also you may find a very slight pause there. It's natural. We're not trying to lengthen the pause, just being aware of it. Breathing like this is very calming for your mind and your whole nervous system. Draws your attention inwards, helps your body relax. And become aware that you, from deep within, are watching this breath. Become aware that you are watching your body breathe. The self deep within is distinct from the body. You're the perceiver. Just as you can watch your body, you can also watch your mind. Let's spend a little time now just standing back from our thoughts and watching them. Just like you might watch clouds flowing in the sky. Standing back and watching those thoughts. Sometimes we have dark clouds, sometimes white and fluffy. All different kinds of clouds pass by. All different kinds of thoughts pass by. Just let them float past the self, the viewer. So the yogic understanding is that the self is distinct from the body and the mind. The body and the mind are temporary. The self is eternal. The self is eternal, full of happiness, full of wisdom and knowledge. Aham Brahmasmi is the term. I am Brahman. I am spirit, not matter. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I'm part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. Through meditation on these transcendental mantras, we can come to a complete understanding of the self, my relationship with other selves, my relationship with the Supreme Self. We're going to move into our meditation now on the Gauranga mantra. Now, when we meditate, you will probably find the mind straying to other things. When you notice that it's strayed, don't worry about it, just gently bring it back and keep listening and repeating. So we'll be dividing Gauranga into 4 syllables. Gaur, Ra, Ang, Ga. And we say it on the long outward breath, and then we take a long inward breath and we think the mantra to ourselves. So join in with me whenever you feel comfortable. Eyes closed. Just let that mantra be present in your mind now, silently meditating on Gauranga. Bring a slight smile to your face. Have a stretch. Bring the arms up. Big breath in. Open your eyes. And bring your arms down. Have a little jiggle. So tonight's topic is the yamas and the niyamas. And this is a question that came up. Someone wrote in to Radhakrishna Das. They were asking him to speak on the yamas and niyamas because they find it quite challenging sometimes to follow them. And so this comes up in the 9th week of a 10-week course on yoga philosophy. And before those 9 weeks, and there's been a bit of understanding preceding them. So I'd just like to briefly run through what is already covered up until that 9th week of the yoga philosophy course in my course. So you probably have already been, you probably already understand this from past talks and study, but it's always good to refresh. So the first thing to understand is, who am I? What is the nature of the self? Am I the body? So, just as we were doing our mindful meditation and we're watching our breath, and from there drawing the inference that I, the self, am watching my breath. So this I is present right from when we're born in this body and right up until the body dies. The body is always changing, but the self remains the same. So I found a really interesting picture that sort of is a good example of how we are not the body. I found a picture of a surfer who'd been attacked by a shark and lost limbs, arms and legs. And he didn't have much body left. In fact, if you looked at him, you'd think, well, he's half a man now. But inside, what's he feeling? He's feeling, yep, my body has lost a lot of its capacity, but I'm still the same. I'm still that same person that was there when I was a child, and that's here now as a surfer, a would-be surfer. Actually, I think he still surfed somehow or other. Pretty cool. So this is a really good example of how I am not the body. The body is, when the body leaves, then, when the body dies, then that's when I leave. It's the body is no longer fit for the self to inhabit, and so the self leaves. And then the next understanding is, am I the mind? So the mind is full of thoughts. In fact, the mind is never still. And we did the exercise of watching our thoughts. And who was it that was watching the thoughts? It was the self. It was me. And then there's other examples also, like sometimes we have very vivid dreams. The dreams, when we wake up, we can remember the dream. We can remember watching the dream. We can replay the dream. So who was it that was watching the dream? Who was it that was experiencing the dream and who is now returning to watch it? And then another example is if I try to remember something, I'm sifting through my memory bank. What was it? When did I hear that? Where did I read that? What was it now? That's the self looking at the mind, looking at the memory bank to try and find some facts. So I'm not the body and I'm not the mind. I'm the soul or the self, the living force deep within. When that, as I was saying, when that living force leaves the body shows its true nature. It's simply matter. It's simply by the presence of the self that the body is animated. So when someone goes missing, they get lost at sea or they're lost in the bush, then they send out search parties. They put a lot of resources into trying to find that person. But after a while, when they realize that that person has no longer any chance of being alive, then the search, there's less resources put into the search, because we don't value a dead body like we value a living one. So the self is intrinsically valuable. Unfortunately, we're covered. We're covered by layers of matter. So you can think of it as the external clothing and the internal, the underwear. So this is like the gross body, the body comprising of, earth, water, fire, air, all these particles that make up the body. And then the subtle body, which is made of mind, intelligence, and the false conception of the self, which is called false ego. So these are the coverings of the self. And this is the goal of meditation, of yoga systems, is to find the self and to become free of those coverings. As well as being covered by material nature, gross and subtle, we're controlled. We're not the supreme spirit soul. We're not the supreme life, living entity. There's so many different ways that we're controlled. We're controlled by the weather, by natural disasters. We're controlled by other people. We're controlled by our mind. So many different ways. We're controlled by our hormones. So we can, the yoga teaching is that we can either be controlled materially or we can be controlled by the Supreme. That's our choice. Virtually, there's very little choice in our life. That we have, we feel like we have a lot of freedom. We have the freedom to choose what to do, but really, most of what we choose to do is governed by these other forces that are controlling us. So, the goal, as I was saying, of the yoga systems is uncovering the self, finding that intrinsic self. And the goal of bhakti yoga is to develop, to find the self and to develop our relationship with the Supreme Self. And this is also the goal of Ashtanga Yoga. And Ashtanga Yoga is what the Yamas and the Niyamas, the question about the Yamas and Niyamas, it comes from the Ashtanga system. So just briefly, the Ashtanga system is a system devised for past ages, and it's it would be very, very difficult to practice Ashtanga Yoga in this day and age. And when I talk about Ashtanga Yoga, it's not the brand that is popular at the moment as yoga schools of rigorous asanas joined together with vinyasa. It's a whole system. Ashta means 8, anga, limbs. So it's an 8-fold system of uncovering the self. And it's put very succinctly by one of my teachers. It's a process of systematically encountering, examining, and transcending each of the various gross and subtle levels of false identity in the mind field until the jewel of the true self comes shining through. So it's a process where by ourselves we're trying to get rid of all those coverings of the self. Remember I talked about the gross covering, the subtle covering. We want to get rid of the control that it has over us so that we can uncover the true self and find our relationship with the Supreme Self. And in the Ashtanga Yoga system, they are trying to develop their love for the Supreme Self who resides in the heart, who's known as the Paramatma. So the goal is similar to Bhakti Yoga, but the process is different. The Ashtanga Yogi is trying, through his own power, to ascend to the ultimate goal, whereas the Bhakti Yoga, is accepting the all-purifying effect of the holy names of the Supreme to help us to become cleansed and to be released from those coverings. So in this day and age, this is the recommended process. The Ashtanga Yoga system, you really need to be living like a monk, and to live like a monk with great austerity, you need to have the support of the community who are going to feed you and just make sure that people are kept away and just look after all the needs. So in this day and age, it's very difficult to find a situation like that. So the eightfold system of Ashtanga Yoga is Yamas Niyamas, which is what we'll be talking about tonight. And they are basically the ways of living your life, ways of, it's like the Ten Commandments or something like that. So ways of living your life, ways of becoming pure in your thoughts. And then after that, it comes asana, which you probably all know as the yogic postures, which are very purifying for the different subtle channels in our body and help us so that we can actually sit comfortably without pain while we meditate. So that's the goal of the asanas in the Ashtanga Yoga system. As well as that is pranayama, which is starting to purify on an even more subtle level the subtle channels in the body by breathing methods. Pratyahara, which is similar to what we did when we're watching our mind. It's withdrawing from the mind, examining every thought, stepping back from it. Then there's dharana. Dharana is developing the ability to concentrate one-pointedly. And then beyond that is dhyana, which is concentrating, meditating on the Supreme. And lastly, it leads us to samadhi, which is having developed our loving relationship with the Supreme and experiencing the bliss of being in that situation. So the understanding of the yoga systems is that there's the way to be truly satisfied, truly happy, is by developing this love for the Supreme. So it can be thought of or described like a beautiful bird kept within a cage. And if we just polish the cage and we don't look after the bird inside, then the bird will not be happy, no matter how beautiful the cage is. Similarly, If we are just looking after our bodily needs, satisfying our senses, trying to find our satisfaction externally, then inside we'll never find that fulfillment and that satisfaction. And you'll find that if you have a goal in life and you achieve the goal, then you need another goal. You need to find something else, because once you've achieved something, then you're still yearning for something else. So this yearning is actually a spiritual yearning that we place externally. So let's move on to the yama and niyama. Firstly, the yama, which is like the don'ts. Non-violence, or ahimsa, is the first yama. So this comes up in many ethical, moral codes and religions. Non-violence, ahimsa, it's part of Buddhism. Thou shalt not kill, it's part of the 10 Commandments. Non-violence just doesn't mean not killing, but it also means not causing pain or suffering to other living entities. So through the Ashtanga system, we have to, they would have to be very, very careful and considering their actions and what they're doing. And similarly in the bhakti system, we can be careful like that also. But the more that we meditate, the more that we stand under the shower of the holy names and become purified, then the more our compassion for others grows, and it becomes very natural that we care for others and we develop this caretaking attitude where we don't want to cause pain or suffering to other living entities. In fact, we want to try and help them. Another yama is not stealing. This is pretty basic, isn't it? Like, I'm sure no one who's listening tonight is into stealing. Stealing is on 2 levels. First of all, someone who steals is trying to get something that they don't have, that they think will provide them with that satisfaction that they feel they're lacking. And as I was saying before, that actually nothing material will make us happy. It's just like polishing the cage. And then on the other level, stealing is thinking that the self, that I, am more important than someone else. It's an arrogance, isn't it? So it shows up in arrogance and not caring for other people. And as we develop in our spiritual life through taking that shower of the holy names, then we develop humility. We don't think we're better than others. We don't think that we deserve more than they do, or we deserve what they have and should take it. So another yama is celibacy. In the Ashtanga system, this is extremely important because they're using their own power to develop their cleansing. And this power is drained through having sex life. That if they can prevent this draining of the power, then they can get that energy, they can muster it, and it can actually drive their consciousness higher within their bodies, so that it's a process of moving up through the chakras, moving up so that their consciousness raises until they can finally develop their relationship with the Supreme. In the bhakti system, celibacy is also important. Celibacy can be looked upon in 2 ways. Like someone who is not in a relationship, then they remain celibate. And in this way, they're not hankering and striving and just using up their energy, using up their mental powers and these sort of pursuits. Someone who's in a long-term relationship, commitment, then celibacy is just considered staying within the bounds of marriage. And that way it helps us from just getting too involved in the material world. Just keeps us just a little bit more focused. Another yama is freedom from greed. So this is similar to the not stealing. For those, many people, because they don't have that feeling of satisfaction deep within, then they're feeling they need more and more and more. It's like often, I can see it in myself sometimes if I in the past, if I have received some bad news or something, or something has gone wrong, I used to go to the fridge and open it and just look in it and I'd say, what am I doing? I was looking up some way or another to fill up that emptiness or that worry that was inside me. We look externally to find that fulfillment, that no matter how much we get, it won't fulfill us. And it helps us to be, this understanding helps us to quell that feeling of greed and be satisfied with what I have. And lastly, the niyama is non-lying. So being truthful. Well, firstly, on the social level, no one likes to be lied to. And then on the other level, internally, you be truthful to yourself. You can be truthful to others. And so it's like you present yourself as you are. And of course there are times when all these yamas, they should be applied to time and circumstance. There are times when we need to lie. It might be really important, life-saving. There may be times when we need things. There may be times when, no, I can't think of a time we need to steal something, but let's move on to the niyamas. So these are more internal things like cleanliness. Of course we need to be clean bodily, but also internal cleansing of the mind. The mind can cover us with feelings of envy and greed and anger and hatred. And by bathing in the holy names of the Supreme, then we're able to gradually cleanse the mind of all these unsavory products. Satisfaction. We're no longer yearning for things that we don't have, and we're feeling completely satisfied. Then it's very simple. And life becomes very simple and uncomplicated when we feel that satisfaction deep within. And satisfaction comes from developing our relationship with Supreme. Because we're always looking for happiness. We're always looking to find that sweet taste in life. Some of us look in food, others in possessions, others in relationships, others in money, and power, and beauty. Always trying to find that sweetness that make us feel good. But actually real sweetness for the self, is found deep within through the relationship with the Supreme. It's one of love and care. And then we become truly satisfied. austerity. So with the Ashtanga yogi, austerity means living in very harsh circumstances and handling them. Whereas for the bhakti yogi, austerity simply means as I'm carrying out this process of bhakti yoga, I will come across things that will not be nice, they'll be difficult, they'll be austere. And because I have this higher purpose, then I accept them. That's austerity for people who are following the bhakti system. A very important one that is really important, you should be doing it every day, is introspection and study. So introspection is like looking internally, how am I going? Taking a spiritual temperature. How much am I finding my satisfaction or trying to find my satisfaction externally? How much am I attracted to the material realm? How much am I attracted to the chanting of God's names? Taking our spiritual temperature. And also study. Study is hearing the philosophy, yoga philosophy, studying it through the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures, and just becoming really acquainted with the process of how to find this relationship with the Supreme. And lastly, the niyama that covers everything is worship of the Supreme. Worship means love, caring. What's really nice to know about the Supreme is that he's like a parent in one sense. For those of you who are parents, you'll know that the happiness of your children is paramount. That if your children aren't happy, it's very difficult to be happy. You want them to be happy. And similarly, the Supreme wants us to be happy. And he knows that we can be happy, we can find our ultimate source of happiness by developing our relationship with him, loving him. And so if worshipping the Supreme is developing our love for the Supreme, it makes him happy, it makes us happy. It's a really nice situation. So in this day and age, we have been given this method of worship, of cleansing, of finding happiness through the chanting of the names of the Supreme. So thank you all for listening, and now we'll move on to doing some of that worship of the Supreme. And I'm going to ask my cameraman, Jug, to help. He doesn't want to come on camera, but he will help. So we'll be singing the Hare Krishna mantra. Just join in with us. I'm not a musician, and I don't usually lead Kirtan. So bear with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Namaste. Thank you for joining me.